Hi, my name is Angel. Welcome back to my channel. I am really bad at keeping up with new book releases, so this is not a video that I do very often or that you guys will see very often, but it is the beginning of the new year and I have a lot of books on my TBR that are 2024 new releases, so I figured I would just go through those books with you guys today and talk about what personally is on my TBR as far as new releases for the year goes. So I have 26 books. They are all categorized by genre. Hopefully I can get to all of those this year, but who knows? Let's just go ahead and get right into it. Our first genre is going to be sci-fi. As you guys may or may not know, I am trying to read more sci-fi this year because I consider myself a person that loves to read sci-fi, so I was shocked and appalled when last year I found out I only read 12 sci-fi books. So we're going to try to up that number this year, and I figured a good way to do that would be to keep an eye on some new releases. The first one is called The Tusks of Extinction by Ray Naylor, and this one is set to come out January 16th, so pretty soon. So I'm just going to read the synopsis to you guys. It says, Moscow has resurrected the mammoth, but someone must teach them how to be mammoths, or they are doomed to die out again. The late Dr. Demira Kismatilina, I don't know if that's how you say that, the world's foremost expert in elephant behavior, is called in to help. While she was murdered a year ago, her digitized consciousness is uploaded into the brain of a mammoth. Can she help the magnificent creatures fend off poachers long enough for their species to take hold? And will she ever discover the real reason they were brought back? And I think that sounds absolutely fascinating, like human consciousness inside of a mammoth, trying to teach the mammoths how to be mammoths. Like, doesn't that sound fascinating? Sign me up. Hopefully I can get my hands on this as soon as it comes out. Next up, we have Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. This one is set to come out March 19th. Annie Bot was created to be the perfect girlfriend for her human owner, Doug. Designed to satisfy his emotional and physical needs, she has dinner ready for him every night, wears the pert outfits he orders for her, and adjusts her libido to suit his moods. True, she's not the greatest at keeping Doug's place spotless, but she's trying to please him. She's trying hard, and she's learning too. Doug says he loves that Annie's AI makes her seem more like a real woman, so Annie explores human traits such as curiosity, secrecy, and longing. But becoming more human also means becoming less perfect, and as Annie's relationship with Doug grows more intricate and difficult, she starts to wonder, does Doug really desire what he says he wants? And in such an impossible paradox, what does Annie owe herself? I think this sounds absolutely fascinating. I don't know if I've really read a lot of books that have to do with like AI, but I know there are a few movies that exist. At the top of my head, I can think of Her or Ex Machina, things that bring AI to life. Obviously, Her is about a man falling in love with a software system or operating system. I don't know what the difference is. So it sounds like an absolutely fascinating book and something that I will really enjoy, so very excited for that one. The next one is Calypso by Oliver K. Langmead. This one is set to come out April 2nd. The synopsis says, Rochelle wakes from cryostasis to take up her role on the colony ark Calypso, but she wakes to find the ship deserted and the interior taken over by a forest. As she explores and finds the last remaining members of the crew, she discovers a legacy of war conducted while she slept. The engineers and the botanists have different visions for how to build the world. The engineers would build a new utopia of technology, and the botanists would have the planet bloom untouched by mankind. Both will destroy the other to ensure their vision of paradise prevails. And I think that sounds so fascinating, the inclusion of nature, and I think that'll be a really interesting dynamic to see these people that want to have all this high-tech technology, like they say, utopia of technology, versus the botanists who just want the plant life to thrive. I don't know, I would probably be on the plant team, so I think this will be a really good and interesting read. Next, we have Hum by Helen Phillips, which is set to come out on August 6th. Helen Phillips is the author of The Need, which I read last year, and it was a 5-star for me. I really enjoyed it, so I was stoked to see that she's coming out with a new book. The synopsis for this one says, in a city addled by climate change and populated by intelligent robots called Hums, May loses her job to artificial intelligence. In a desperate bid to resolve her family's debt and secure their future for another few months, she becomes a guinea pig in an experiment that alters her face so it cannot be recognized by surveillance. Seeking some reprieve from her recent hardships and from her family's addiction to their devices, she splurges on passes that allow them 3 nights respite inside a botanical garden, a rare green refuge where forests, streams, and animals flourish. But her insistence that her son, daughter, and husband leave their devices at home proves far more fraught than she anticipated. Oh my god, can I read? And the lush beauty of the botanical garden is not the balm she hoped it would be. When her children come under threat, May is forced to put her trust in a hum of uncertain motives as she works to restore the life of her family. This one also kind of sounds like it's got the 2 elements of like technology versus nature, and I think that sounds really, really interesting. Like I said, I did enjoy the last book that I read by Helen Phillips, so I'm gonna pick this up regardless, and I hope I really like it. I have 2 more sci-fi to go through, and these one I have labeled to try because I don't know if it's the exact sci-fi that I will be interested in. Like, I'm not fully invested in the synopsis of either of these books, but I'm interested enough to at least try it because I want to learn more about what I like about sci-fi and what I don't like about sci-fi, and the only way to do that is to try things. So this first one is called Mal Goes to War by Edward Ashton, and this is set to come out on April 9th. As a free AI, Mal finds the war between the modded and augmented Federals and the puritanical humanists about as interesting as a battle between rival anthills. He's not above scouting the battlefield for salvage, though, and when the humanists abruptly cut off access to infospace, he finds himself trapped in the body of a cyborg mercenary and responsible for the safety of the modded girl she died protecting. A dark comedy wrapped in techno-thriller skin, Mal Goes to War provides a satirical take on war, artificial intelligence, and what it really means to be human. And that last part is really what gets me. Satirical take on war, AI, and what it really means to be human. Those are things that sound very, very interesting to me. And I hope that there will be some emotional impact from this book as well. The next one that I'm not entirely sure if I will enjoy because I'm not entirely sure if I understand what the synopsis is trying to say. This is Escape Velocity by Victor Manibo. This is set to come out April 23rd, and let me read you the synopsis. Space Habitat Altair, don't know if that's how you pronounce it, is the premier luxury resort in low Earth orbit, playground of the privileged and the perfect location to host reunions for the Rochford Institute. Rochford boasts only the best, the wealthiest, most promising students with the most impressive pedigrees. Complete with spacewalks, these lavish reunions are a prime opportunity for alumni to jockey for power with old friends and rivals, and crucially, to advance their applications to live in an exclusive Mars settlement. Earth is dying and only the best deserve to save themselves. Aboard the Altair for a 25th reunion, finance magnate Ava pursues the truth about her brother's murder during their senior year. Laz, ambassador and political scion, hopes to finally win Ava's heart. Sloane, collecting secrets to conceal his family's decline, angles for a key client. And Henry, heir to a healthcare empire, creates an unorthodox opportunity to get Mars in a last-ditch effort to outrun a childhood secret. So, you can tell there are a lot of characters with a lot of different motives just from the synopsis. I think it's like a murder mystery on this like fancy space station. Obviously a lot of rich kid, like wealthy kid drama. I'm not entirely sure if I will enjoy it, and like I said, the synopsis kind of confuses me a little bit, but I have it there to try. Moving away from sci-fi now, we are going into my horror category, which is the longest category for this video. So starting off, we have One Must Go by Alex Reed, which is set to come out January 19th. The synopsis for this says, every year a new group is chosen. Every year there must be a sacrifice. A laughing, drunken god picks 3 middle school children for his deadly ritual. 2 may live as long as they pick one in their group to be given to the dead. Sam, an angry child who feels abandoned, along with his best friend Benjamin, who fears Sam more than anything else, meet Maggie, who is no stranger to death. Sam sees an opportunity in the horror to get back at those who have wronged him. He grows cruel and violent. Someone must be picked. Whether it is through bargaining, treachery, or bloodshed, one must go. And I think that sounds really fascinating. It sounds like a very interesting cast of characters, and I'm intrigued. The next one is The House of Last Resort by Christopher Golden. I recently read my first Christopher Golden book and really enjoyed the writing style of it. The story so much was a little bit more average for me, but I really like the writing and I want to try more from Christopher Golden. So this one is set to come out January 30th. This one has a really long synopsis. It starts with, across Italy, there are many half-empty towns, nearly abandoned by those who migrate to the coast or to cities. The beautiful, crumbling hilltop town of Becina, don't know if that's how you pronounce it, is among them, but its mayor has taken drastic measures to rebuild, selling abandoned homes to anyone in the world for €1 as long as the buyer promises to live there for at least 5 years. It's a no-brainer for American couple Tommy and Kate. Both work remotely, and Becina is the home of Tommy's grandparents, his closest living relatives. It feels like a romantic adventure, an opportunity the young couple would be crazy not to seize. But from the moment they move in, they both feel a shadow has fallen on them. Tommy's grandmother is furious, even a little frightened when she realizes which house they've bought. There are rooms in an annex at the back of the house that they didn't know were there. The place makes strange noises at night. Locked doors are suddenly open, and when they go to a family gathering, they're certain people are whispering about them and about their house, which one neighbor refers to as the House of Last Resort. Soon they learn that the home was owned for generations by the church, but the real secret and the true dread is unlocked when they finally learn what the priests were doing in this house for all those long years, and how many people died in the strange chapel inside. I think this sounds absolutely fascinating, like the haunted house type of vibe with a very, very dark history to it. I'm very curious to read that one and see what it turns out to be, and read more from Christopher Golden. The next one is called These Things Linger by Dan Franklin, and it is set to come out February 1st. The synopsis says, when Alex Wilson's estranged uncle unexpectedly dies, Alex realizes he would do just about anything to make peace with the man who had raised him as his own. He'd even reach out to the dead. But things more dangerous than ghosts haunt his uncle's broken down trailer and the nearly abandoned one gas station town of Fair Hill just beyond. Things that can devour the living and the dead alike and are all too ready to answer his call. Some parts of our past never really leave us. There are things that don't know how to die. This just sounds really interesting to me, reaching out to the dead, finding things that are worse than just human spirits, and this little isolated kind of small town with a dark past is really, really intriguing to me. The next one is Among the Living by Tim Levin, and this is set to come out February 13th. The synopsis says, estranged friends Dean and Bethan meet after 5 years apart when they are drawn to a network of caves on a remote Arctic island. Bethan and her friends are environmental activists determined to protect the land. But Dean's group's exploitation of rare earth minerals deep in the caves unleashes a horrific contagion that has rested frozen and undisturbed for many millennia. Fleeing the terrors emerging from the caves, Dean and Bethan and their rival teams undertake a perilous journey on foot across an unpredictable and volatile landscape. The ex-friends must learn to work together if they're to survive, and more importantly, stop the horror from spreading to the wider world. This sounds absolutely fascinating. I love a good, snowy, isolated, cold horror or thriller book. The aspect of the caves and unleashing something within them is really interesting to me, and I also like the dynamic of these two people that were friends and are not friends anymore, and now they find themselves in this dire situation. They have to work together. I think that'll be a really interesting element of the story. The next one is The Bad Ones by Melissa Albert, and it is set to come out February 20th. I think this is a fantasy horror, and I think it might also be YA, but I'm not entirely sure. The synopsis says, in the course of a single winter's night, 4 people vanish without a trace across a small town. Nora's estranged best friend Becca is one of the lost. As Nora tries to untangle the truth of Becca's disappearance, she discovers a darkness in her town's past, as well as a string of coded messages that Becca left for her to unravel. These clues lead Nora to a piece of local folklore, a legendary goddess of forgotten origins who played a role in Nora and Becca's own childhood games. ... Which sounds really, really interesting. Once again, the whole like winter atmosphere, missing people, disappearances, and the idea of this folklore and this goddess that maybe is involved somehow. I really like folk horror, so I'm excited to give this one a try. The next one is Indian Burial Ground by Nick Medina, which is set to come out April 16th. I have not read a book by Nick Medina yet, although I've heard really, really good things about some of his other work. Actually, I think he had a short story in, what is it called? Never Whistle at Night. And I think that his story in that one was one of my favorites out of the collection. So I hope that's a good sign that I will enjoy a full-length novel from him. This one says, all Noemi Broussard wanted was a fresh start. With a new boyfriend who actually treats her right and a plan to move from the reservation she grew up on, just like her beloved Uncle Louis before her, things are finally looking up for her, until the news of her boyfriend's apparent suicide brings her world crumbling down. But the facts about Rottie's death just don't add up, and Noemi isn't the only one who suspects something menacing might be lurking within their tribal lands. After more than a decade away, Uncle Louis has returned to the reservation, bringing with him a past full of secrets and horror, and what might be the key to determining Rottie's true cause of death. Together, Noemi and Louis set out to find answers, but as they get closer to the truth, Noemi begins to question whether it might be best for some secrets to remain buried. I think this one sounds really, really interesting. Like I said, I really enjoyed Nick Medina's story in the anthology that I read. And also, I really, really love to read horror from Native authors. I think Native folklore is so fascinating, and I really love when people build horror stories around them, especially the natives themselves, obviously, because it's their stories. I don't know, I think it's fascinating, and Native authors are some of my favorites to read from when it comes to horror, but I say that and I feel like read that many, so I want to read more and find new Native authors to read from, especially within this genre. So if you guys have any recommendations, definitely let me know. Moving on now, the next book is One of You by Erin E. Adams, and this is set to come out April 23rd. If you guys don't know, Jackal by Erin E. Adams was one of my top 10 books from last year, so I'm really excited to pick up another book by her. This is another long synopsis. It says, everything about the Beauclair family seems normal, almost perfect even. They immigrated to New York City from Haiti years ago, looking for their own piece of America's promised riches. They go to church, they're good neighbors, and their two daughters, Judith and Beatrice, have typical sibling rivalries that keep things interesting. But beneath this polished exterior, something is just slightly off. There's malice waiting, wanting to reveal itself. When their mother unexpectedly dies, Judith and Bea are overwhelmed by a mob of relatives, friends, and church ladies. Amidst taking care of the funeral, they meet Libet, who claims to be a close friend of their mother's. Bea welcomes her, but Judith is immediately suspicious. Their mother never mentioned Libet, and yet she seems to know everything about them. After a series of unsettling events, a disfigured doll appearing in their attic, childhood photos of Bea vanishing, and a mysterious illness suddenly afflicting their father, Judith and Bea are forced to dive into a hidden world of mythos and question Libet's role in it all. What they learn could threaten the bedrock of the entire Beauclair family and reveal a rot that goes deeper than the roots they first made in this place. Like I said, I really loved Erin E. Adams' book Jackal when I read it last year, and that book definitely starts off as something different than the direction it goes at the end, but I love the direction that it took, so I'm kind of hoping that this is kind of similar, where it starts off as one sort of story and then develops into a different sort of story and a different type of horror altogether. Either way, I'm really, really excited to pick it up, seeing as Jackal was one of my top 10 books for last year. I need a drink of coffee. I am stumbling over my words, and that's how you can tell I've been like talking and reading out loud for too long. The next book is Supplication by Noor Abi Nicole. I hope I pronounced that correct. This is supposed to come out May 7th, and the synopsis says, our protagonist comes to in a basement tied to a chair with a man looming over her, but someone has a knife. We follow her as she emerges from captivity into an unnamed, nightmarish city seeking some meaning to her new reality. As figures emerge from the night, some offering sanctuary and others judgment, she keeps moving, making her way through this fever dream of a narrative. Supplication is a haunting, embodied tale of alienation, fear, and the quest for respite. Really, I feel like the synopsis doesn't give you a lot, but I feel like it's vague on purpose. The cover is absolutely beautiful, and I love books that read like a fever dream, especially when it comes to horror. So I'm really excited to try this out. I want to try to read more like weird horror books this year, because that is definitely like the type of horror and the type of books that I like. I like weird little books, so I'm hoping this will deliver that type of vibe. The next book is The House That Horror Built by Christina Henry, and this is set to come out May 14th. Christina Henry is the author of several books. I have read Near the Bone by her and really enjoyed it, and ever since then have been wanting to pick up another book by her. So I have some on my TBR. I actually have one on my physical TBR that I got for Christmas. So obviously, I'm going to try to pick up her new release as well. The synopsis for this one says, Harry Adams has always loved horror movies, so it's not totally a coincidence that she took the job cleaning house for movie director Javier Castillo. His forbidding gray stone Chicago mansion, Bright Horses, is filled from top to bottom with terrifying props and costumes, as well as glittering awards from his career making horror films that thrilled audiences, until family tragedy and scandal forced him to vanish from the industry. Javier values discretion, and Harry has always tried to clean the house immaculately, keeps her head down, and keeps her job safe. She needs the money to support her son. But then she starts hearing noises from behind a locked door, noises that sound remarkably like a human voice calling for help, even though Javier lives alone and never has visitors. Harry knows that not asking questions is a vital part of keeping her job, but she soon finds the forbidding house may be home to secrets she can't ignore. This just sounds really interesting to me. Like I said, I enjoy Christina Henry's writing, so I'm very excited to give that one a try. The next one is Youth Juice by E.K. Sathu. I probably did not pronounce that correctly, but this is supposed to come out June 4th, and this is like a wellness beauty industry horror, which I really love. Natural Beauty is a horror along those same lines, and that was my number 2 book for last year. So hopefully I can find a win with this one as well. This says, from Sophia Banyan's first day of the storytelling team at, I don't know how to pronounce that, HEBE, a luxury skincare wellness company based in New York's trendy Soho neighborhood, it's clear something is deeply amiss. But Sophia, pushing 30 with plenty of skeletons in her closet next to the designer knockoffs, doesn't care. Though she leads an outwardly charmed life, she aches for a deeper meaning to her flat existence and a cure for her brutal, nail-biting habit. She finds it all and more at HEBE, and with Tree Whitestone, the charismatic founder and CEO. Soon, Sophia is addicted to her lifestyle, especially Youth Juice, the fatty, soothing moisturizer Tree has asked Sophia to test. But when cracks in the infrastructure start to worsen and Sophia learns the gruesome secret ingredient of the heart of Youth Juice, she has to decide how far she's willing to go to stay beautiful forever. Once again, it sounds absolutely fascinating, sounds very similar to Natural Beauty, so I'm really curious to see where it goes with that. Then we have How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive by Craig DeLuey. This is set to come out June 18th. Craig DeLuey is the author of episode 13, which I think I gave 5 stars, and then I also read Suffer the Children by him a few years ago, and I gave that one 4 stars. So this is another like film-centric novel. So this says, Max Mori should be on top of the world. He's a famous horror director. Actors love him. Hollywood needs him. He's making money hand over fist. But it's the 80s, and he's directing cheap slashers for audiences who only crave more blood, not real art, not real horror. And Max's slimy producer refuses to fund any of his new ideas. Sally Priest dreams of being the final girl. She knows she's got what it takes to score the lead role, even if she's only been cast in small parts so far. When Sally meets Max at his latest rap party, she sets out to impress him and prove her scream queen prowess. But when Max discovers an old camera that filmed a very real Hollywood horror, he knows that he has to use this camera for his next movie. The only problem is that it came with a cryptic warning and sometimes whales. By the time Max discovers the true evil lying within, he's already dead set on finishing the scariest movie ever put to film, and like it or not, it's Sally's time to shine as the final girl. So it sounds really, really interesting. It sounds like there's like a haunted camera or evil camera, I don't know. But it sounds fascinating, and I really enjoyed episode 13, so I'm hoping this one will be a win as well. This next one is by an author that I really love, and I have been waiting for him to put out a new book. This is The Queen by Nick Cutter, which is set to come out August 27th. The synopsis says, on a sunny morning in June, Margaret Carpenter wakes up to find a new iPhone on her doorstep. She switches it on to find a text from her best friend, Charity Atwater. The problem is, Charity's been missing for over a month. Most people in town, even the police, think she's dead. Margaret and Charity have been lifelong friends. They share everything, know the most intimate details about one another, but Charity carries a secret that even she is unaware of. A secret engraved into her DNA helix. For Charity is also known as Subject 6, the crown jewel of Project Athena, a clandestine and unorthodox gene manipulation experiment, the brainchild of tech titan Rudyard Crate. And when Charity's gene sequencing actualizes during a traumatic event at a high school party, it sets in motion a chain of events that will end in tragedy, bloodshed, and death. And now Charity wants Margaret to know her story, the real story, in a narrative that takes place over one feverish day. Margaret follows a series of increasingly dreadful breadcrumbs as she forges deeper into the mystery of her best friend, a person she never truly knew at all. It just sounds fascinating. I love Nick Cutter's books, and this almost sounds like it has like a little bit of a sci-fi twist, so I'm really curious to see how that plays out. And once again, I'm just like dying to read another Nick Cutter book, especially a new one, so this will be fun. And another one by an author that I am ready to read from again. This is So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. As with Rachel Harrison's previous books, this one will be coming out in September, which makes it a perfect Halloween read. The synopsis says, Sloane Parker is dreading her birthday. She doesn't need a reminder she's getting older or that she's feeling indifferent about her own life. Her husband surprises her with a birthday weekend getaway, not with him, but with Sloane's longest best friend, troublemaker extraordinaire Naomi. Sloane anticipates a weekend of wine tasting and cozy robes and strategic avoidance of issues she'd rather not confront, like her husband's repeated infidelity. But when they arrive at their rental cottage, it becomes clear Naomi has something else in mind. She wants Sloane to stop letting things happen to her, for Sloane to really live. So Naomi orchestrates a wild night out with a group of mysterious strangers, only for it to take a horrifying turn that changes Sloane and Naomi's lives literally forever. The friends are forced to come to terms with some pretty eternal consequences in this bloody, seductive novel about how it's never too late to find satisfaction, even though it might taste different than expected. So if this is anything like Rachel Harrison's past books, we can expect something kind of light and fun and a little bit silly, and I believe this does have to do with vampires based off of the synopsis and the title. So I'm really, really excited to pick this one up this spooky season. Moving on to the thriller category, I only have 3 thrillers on this list because I've kind of been learning a little bit more about my reading taste recently, and I don't know if thrillers are the direction that I want to continue taking my reading, unless it's a specific type of thriller. So the first one is The Clinic by Kate Quinn, and it is expected to come out January 23rd. The synopsis says, Meg works for a casino in LA, catching cheaters and popping a few too many pain pills to cope, following a far different path than her sister Haley, a famous actress. But suddenly reports surface of Haley dying at the remote rehab facility where she had been forced to get her addictions under control. There are whispers of suicide, but Meg can't believe it. She decides that the best way to find out what happened to her sister is to check in herself, to investigate what really happened from the inside. Battling her own addictions and figuring out the truth will be much more difficult than she imagined, far away from friends, family, and anyone who could help her. This sounds really interesting to me because I love the setting of like this remote rehab center. Anything that has to do with a big building, specifically if it's like an institution or a hospital or something like that, I think is really, really interesting to me. So I want to give this one a try and see if I like it or not. The other two thrillers on this list are from authors that I've read from and enjoyed before. The first one is One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. Ruth Ware is one that I have read, well, except for 0 Days. But everything before 0 Days I have read from her and I own. This one is expected to come out May 21st. Ruth Ware is like a go-to thriller author for me where I know I can pick up her thrillers and I will most likely enjoy them. So this one says, Lila is in a bit of a rut. Her post-doctoral research has fizzled out. She's pretty sure they won't extend her contract and things with her boyfriend Nico, an aspiring actor, aren't going great. When the opportunity arises for Nico to join the cast of a new reality TV show, The Perfect Couple, she decides to try it out with him. A whirlwind audition process later, Lila finds herself whisked off to a tropical paradise with Nico, boating through the Indian Ocean towards Ever After Island, where the two of them will compete against 4 other couples in order to win a cash prize. But not long after they arrive on the deserted island, things start to go wrong. After the first challenges leave everyone rattled and angry, an overnight storm takes matters from bad to worse. Cut off from the mainland by miles of ocean, deprived of their phones, and unable to contact the crew that brought them here, the group must band together for survival. As tensions run high and fresh water runs low, Lila finds that this game show is all too real, and the stakes are life or death. So I think this sounds really interesting, the isolated island aspect of it all, and the like reality TV kind of game show sounds really interesting. So I'm very excited to give that one a try. Then of course we have the new Riley Sager book, Middle of the Night. This one comes out June 18th, and the synopsis says, the worst thing to ever happen on Hemlock Circle occurred in Ethan Marsh's backyard. One July night, 10-year-old Ethan and his best friend and neighbor Billy fell asleep in a tent set up on a manicured lawn in a quiet, quaint New Jersey cul-de-sac. In the morning, Ethan woke up alone. During the night, someone had sliced the tent open with a knife and taken Billy. He was never seen again. 30 years later, Ethan has reluctantly returned to his childhood home. Plagued by bad dreams and insomnia, he begins to notice strange things happening in the middle of the night. Someone seems to be roaming the cul-de-sac at odd hours, and signs of Billy's presence keep appearing in Ethan's backyard. Is someone playing a cruel prank, or has Billy, long thought to be dead, somehow returned to Hemlock Circle? The mysterious occurrences prompt Ethan to investigate what really happened that night, a quest that reunites him with former friends and neighbors and leads him into the woods that surround Hemlock Circle. Woods where Billy claimed monsters roam and where a mysterious institute does clandestine research on a crumbling estate. The closer Ethan gets to the truth, the more he realizes that no place, be it quiet forest or suburban street, is completely safe, and that the past has a way of haunting the present. So this has a lot of things that sound really, really interesting to me. We have like a dark childhood event happening, disappearance, a missing child. Then they mention a mysterious institute and monsters in the woods, and all of that sounds really, really interesting to me, and I'm very curious to see where it goes. Riley Sager is one that has very twisty thrillers, so I don't know what to expect from this, but I'm gonna read it. I had to stop and free up more space because I was filming for a lot longer than I thought I had been. But we only have a few left. The next section is nonfiction, which I only have 2 of. They both have very long synopsises. Synopsises? Is that a word? Synopsises? I don't know. Anyways. The first one is Slow Productivity, The Lost Art of Accomplishment Without Burnout by Cal Newport. This is set to come out March 5th, and Cal Newport is the author of a book called Digital Minimalism, which I read a couple of years ago and mostly enjoyed. So this one has me intrigued. The synopsis says, our current definition of productivity is broken. It pushes us to treat busyness as a proxy for useful effort, leading to impossibly lengthy task lists and ceaseless meetings. We're overwhelmed by all we have to do and on the edge of burnout, left to decide between giving into soul-sapping hustle culture or rejecting ambition altogether. But are these really our only choices? Long before the arrival of pinging inboxes and clogged schedules, history's most creative and impactful philosophers, scientists, artists, and writers mastered the art of producing valuable work with staying power. In this timely and provocative book, Cal Newport harnesses the wisdom of these traditional knowledge workers to radically transform our modern jobs. Drawing from deep research on the habits and mindsets of a varied cast of storied thinkers, Newport lays out the key principles of slow productivity. From the aggressive rethinking of workload management to introducing seasonal variation to shifting your performance toward long-term quality, slow productivity provides a roadmap for escaping overload and arriving instead at a more timeless approach to pursuing meaningful accomplishment. The world of work is due for a new revolution. Slow productivity is exactly what we need. This sounds really, really interesting to me. I know they touch on it in the synopsis, and I'm sure he's going to touch on it in the book. Just the way that our society is set up nowadays and how so many people see like hustle culture and like just overworking ourselves and thinking that that should be the norm. And the next nonfiction is The Age of Magical Overthinking, Notes on Modern Irrationality by Amanda Montell. This is set to come out April 9th, and Amanda Montell is the author of Cultish, which is a 5-star nonfiction for me. So the synopsis for this one says, magical thinking can be broadly defined as the belief that one's internal thoughts can affect unrelated events in the external. Think of the conviction that one can manifest their ways out of poverty, stave off cancer with positive vibes, thwart the apocalypse by learning to can their own peaches, or transform an unhealthy relationship to a glorious one with loyalty alone. In all its forms, magical thinking works in a service of restoring agency amid chaos. But in the age of magical overthinking, Montell argues that in the modern information age, our brain's coping mechanisms have been overloaded and our rationality turned up to an 11. In a series of razor-sharp, deeply funny chapters, Montell delves into a cornucopia of the cognitive biases that run rampant in our brains, from how the halo effect cultivates worship of larger-than-life celebrities, to how the sunk cost fallacy can keep us in detrimental relationships long after we've realized they're not serving us. As she illuminates these concepts with her signature brilliance and wit, Montell's prevailing message is one of hope, empathy, and ultimately forgiveness for our anxiety-addled human selves. If you have all but lost faith in our ability to reason, Montell aims to make some sense of the senseless. This sounds interesting to me because I am somebody that does believe in like manifestation and the power of like our thoughts, and I think that we have more power to manifest things than we give ourselves credit for. So you would think that this doesn't sound interesting to me, but it does sound really interesting. I am really curious to see what she has to say about manifestation and the whole stave off cancer with positive vibes. But also when she goes on to talk about the halo effect, worship and hatred of larger-than-life celebrities, and the sunken cost fallacy, I think sounds really interesting. Like I said, Cultish I really, really enjoyed, and that was a very language-based book, like the analysis of language. So I'm really curious to see what she explores within this book. And it has a gorgeous cover, just like Cultish does, so I love that. And last but not least, I have my other category, which just has 2 books in it, but they are both of different genres that are not anywhere else on the list, so they're just kind of thrown in at the end. The first one is a fantasy. This is Fae Bound by Sarah L. Arifi. This is set to come out January 18th, and I believe it is the first book in a series. The synopsis says, Yi-Ran. Don't ask me if that's correct because it's a fantasy name. I don't know if that's how you say it. Can we just call her Y? Y is a warrior in the Elven army and has known nothing but violence her whole life. Her sister Lettel is trying to make a living as a diviner, seeking prophecies of a better future. When a fatal mistake leads to Y's exile from the Elven lands, they are both forced into the terrifying wilderness beyond their borders. There they encounter the impossible, the Fae Court. The Fae haven't been seen for a millennium, but now Y and Lettel are thrust into their seductive world, torn between their loyalty to each other, their elven homeland, and their hearts. This sounds really, really interesting to me. I love fairies, and I want to read more fantasy that has to do with fairies. So this is very interesting. They are thrown out of their homeland, and then they have to go into the Fae land. And I think that'll be a really interesting dynamic, and to see their relationships develop with the Fae and their perceptions of the Fae change. I don't know. It sounds really interesting, and I think it's got a gorgeous cover as well. And last but not least is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is set to come out February 6th. I don't read very much romance, but Ali Hazelwood is one that I have enjoyed in the past. So this is a different type of romance from her. The synopsis says, Misery Lark, the only daughter of the most powerful vampire councilman of the Southwest, is an outcast again. Her days of living anonymous among the humans are over. She has been called upon to uphold a historic peacekeeping alliance between the vampires and their mortal enemies, the Wares, and she sees little choice but to surrender herself in the exchange again. Wares are ruthless and unpredictable, and their alpha, Lo Moreland, is no exception. He rules his pack with absolute authority, but not without justice. And unlike the Vampire Council, not without feeling. It's clear that the way he tracks Misery's every movement that he doesn't trust her. If only he knew how right he was. Because Misery has her own reasons to agree to this marriage of convenience, reasons that have nothing to do with politics or alliances, and everything to do with the only thing she's ever cared about. And she's willing to do whatever it takes to get back what's hers, even if it means a life alone in Were territory. Alone with the wolf. You know, I'm not sure if I'm gonna like this one, but I want to try it. We got vampires, we got werewolves, we got this little female character, and I think is like a romantasy type of book. I have no idea, but I'm very curious to see how it goes, because I know Ali Hazelwood is really known for writing like STEM romances, so it appears she is kind of stepping out of that a little bit with her last book, Check and Mate, and now this one coming out. So I'm very curious to see what the story is and if it's good or not. Anyway, I have been talking for way too long, but those are 26 new releases that are on my TBR for the upcoming year. Let me know if you guys plan on reading any of these books and if they sound interesting to you. And with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I will see you next time.